mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up, throw what can make a better me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pommy and Fazz show. I am the Pom given away by my accent. Joining me, the lovely Fazz dog. How are we going, Fazz?
Very good, mate. Very good. I'm really excited to talk about this post-season show now, because given the fact that our season's now over, I'm really excited to look at and talk about how we can rebuild this list. Evidently, that's what social media has been telling me. So it's going to be great.
I was quite disappointed this week when I checked my draft board and was like, fucking hell, these players have only played one game. Who do we pick? So yeah, I feel you. I mean, I suppose that's a great time to welcome you all. Good day, everyone. Some great people in chat. Got Paula. We've got the wonderful Andy. Good day, Aussie Nick. We've got CC the Demon. We've got Health for You. 02. Michael. Big Gav. Cameron. Gab's enjoyed the overreaction. We'll try and be we'll try and overreact for you. Global, good day. Jace and the legend that is Pete. Well, I suppose no time like the present. I don't really want to talk about it, but let's do it. Let's talk about Carlin.
Living life every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Fuck me.
Well, I mean, the last lyrics of that song sum up exactly how we feel. Carlton obviously opened up Gav around in an eventful game. If you were Adelaide, 56-point win for the Crows. The great Chris is on holiday. Good day to you, Mr. Fazz. So obviously, as Fazz said, season over for many. Chat and Fazz, you've had a long time to think of it, 7 days, so you should be over the initial anger point. How are we feeling about that? Like, be honest, lay it on me.
Well, it's literally a week ago, right this moment. It would be close to half time. I was already over it by then. I did my morning and post-mortem during that first quarter, because it was just electric, that first quarter. It was so shocking. It was actually hard to believe what we were watching. And to me, this is going to sound really crazy, but that's actually a good thing, being the fact that it was so abnormally shocking to see. I genuinely don't believe we'll see it again. Like, it was that much of an anomaly. And I think one of the best lines I heard was Carlton played like it was round 5 and Adelaide played like it was a once-in-a-generation opportunity. And it was their grand final, and they came out like it was their grand final. They were on the stage. No one gives two squirts of piss about South Australia or Adelaide, and they really put themselves on the map. That doesn't excuse the performance from Carlton, but I genuinely, in my heart of hearts, believe it was that shocking that it has to be an anomaly. Like, it was that shocking.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I mean, I've got to admit, I've been pretty good. I think I've given myself, don't often give myself a pat on the back, but I think from the review, fan cams, multiple Blue Abroad shows, I've done well. I've done well. I've kept the energies. But let's be honest, let's dissect it. He kind of was like doing 6 extra hours at work overtime to try and pay the mortgage off early, only to come home and see your brother in bed with your wife. He's probably the best analogy that I could find. It was really tough to watch. And I share with you because I think James here, not James, who was it? It was the lovely Aussie Nick, who said, I thought we were past losing like that. And I think that was my thought. And then, you know what? We might encroach Pom's rant, but I felt after that game, the mental fragility for me with this football club, and this is said with all respect in the world, I think it's been there since I came here. So I've only been here since 2010. So I first started taking a shit 2012. I think it's been there ever since, to be honest. I think the apathy I see on the pitch is the apathy I see in the fan base, is the apathy I see around the whole thing. It feels... Being a content creator, I see a lot of Carlton people, and I see that it's really easy when they lose. I see loads of comments, Carlton is shit, back to 2018, sack Voss, we've gone backwards. Everyone seems to, who's got a voice, goes out on socials and posts all this nonsense, right? And I'm like, but no one ever gives a fucking solution. Do you know what I mean? Like Helen Keller could use Braille and work out that fucking this weekend was dog shit, right? Right? It's been bad. But no one ever presents a fucking solution. And the fan base is so fractured, I can only imagine that we are a minuscule piece of what the players feel because they haven't witnessed it. They've done something worse. They've lived it. They've gone and played, and they've actually experienced it. Like, I'm thankful I went to bed with my wife that night. They had to get on a fucking plane and be like, fuck, we played like that in front of 2.8 million people watching at home as well. So, the way I try and get around this is it is mentally fractured. And I think a big part of this mental fractured you see in the Blues fan base that I guarantee you know, when I take the piss, danger game, things like that, danger game, I take the piss, people say it. Guaranteed, without a shadow of a doubt, there is players lining up against Adelaide with that mentality. Danger 100%. Game. It has 100%. Become an actual thing. And like, we've got no regrets in here, and he'll take the piss, but he's a good friend of the channel. He's a pie. But it kind of gets embarrassing. Like, I mean this with all due respect. I was more embarrassed by us on Twitter.
Correct.
Instagram and Facebook.
Correct.
I can cop the performance. Do you know what I mean? I can cop the performance. I'll take it on the chin. But do you know what I mean? Like, there comes a point in time for me, if I demand standards, I have to set my own standards. And for me, that was well short of what I expect from the football club, right? As a football team. Yeah. But I will caveat this, right? They are going to cop hidings. Geelong have copped hidings this year. Melbourne have copped hidings. Do you know what I mean? Cops are hiding against Brisbane. Brisbane then cops are hiding. Yeah. What it is now for me is, okay, these boys may have had a stumbling block. Whatever happened, I don't fucking know. Because they didn't look at the races. They didn't look sharp. They didn't look energetic. They looked really abject. Is it a flash in the pan? Time will tell. We'll know this time next week. But for me now, it's dusting yourself off. And yeah, okay, pick up all the faults. But for me, if you're going to make blanket statements like Plowman's dog shit, right? Yeah. Give some solutions. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously, in my opinion, Voss isn't a moron. He can't be, right? He can't physically be a moron. There's got to be a reason in his mind that he didn't trust Kemp. He trusted Plowman. Yes, he maybe got it wrong. What I want to see is some fucking accountability, though, right? This is what I want to see from the club, from the players. And I'm going to ask chat a question, and you, Fazz. Who is one player that you look at and you know every week he's going to give his all?
To answer that question, I've got a few other things I want to talk about, but to answer that question straight away, one player that gives, I think Nick Newman is probably one that springs to mind straight away. But that doesn't mean they don't give their all. I think even someone like Weeders, who got really harshly done by him, I mean, it's not like he's not giving his all. He tried. I mean, the players are trying, and I mean, anyone who was lucky enough or had an opportunity to speak to the boys this week, which I did today. I caught up, but saw a couple today. They're just young men, you know, like they know their stuff. They don't need to hear it. They know what they've done. and they know that that's not good enough. I won't mention who I spoke to today, but I saw, and he was broken. The poor fellow was broken. I actually just think, I said to him, so mate, why are you still thinking about it? I'm not thinking about it. You got a game on Sunday, and these are young men who are going to bed every night thinking about this stuff, and it's really playing on them, what happened on Thursday. So much so, I actually worry about them for Sunday, because they see what has been posted on Twitter. Anyone who is listening to this right now, I'm telling you, I promise you, they see everything. They're young men. They see everything.
They probably live on their phones.
They do. And look, I'll get to the supporter side of it in a minute. I'll talk about the beating. Brisbane round 1, 54 points. Bulldogs round 1, 50 points. Looking in here, Port Adelaide won by 50 odd points, then lost by 71 points. I mean, Bulldogs again, 51 points. Are we acting like Carlton are the first team in the history of the game to lose and lose ugly? Because honestly, Sydney lost by 50 points to Melbourne in round 3. Do I need to go on? Collingwood 5 goals to Brisbane. And you talk about the Carlton Adelaide game. Perfect conditions, we lose by 10 goals. Essendon Melbourne in pissing down rain. Essendon won by 5 goals. So it's the equivalent's the same. I don't want to go too hard on our supporters. But don't be cowards. Just don't be cowards. And at the end of the day, if you sit there and tell me that our season is completely cooked because we lost a game in round 5, then I think that's more of a your issue. That's a your issue. And it just shows the intelligence or even the mindset. Because Twitter, social media, Facebook was a disgraceful and disgusting place Thursday night onwards. It was fucking pitiful. And I'm looking at anyone, I'm talking to anyone. Maybe I posted something, I don't know. It was fucking pitiful. And anyone who wants to put a player out there, and we know who they are, Plowman, O'Brien, we know the easy targets. We lost by 10 goals. If you think Lockie Plowman was the reason we lost by 10 goals, you're a fucking idiot. Full stop. It has to stop now. I see these guys, I speak to these guys, and enough is enough. We cannot bury them. Anyone who pots the club, players, you're a fucking coward. Because we're meant to support. It's unconditional. We unconditionally support our football club like we unconditionally love our family. Yes, give them a kick up the ass when they need it. Like we do our kids. If a kid's stuff around, hey, get to your room, whatever. But the absolute vitriol that was on those platforms after a loss, fuck off and support someone else, because I don't want to deal with that. It actually makes me so upset, especially speaking to some of the players today. It actually makes me so upset because we're meant to love these boys in this club unconditionally. Look up what unconditional means.
Mate, I agree with you. And shout out to Danny B, who's just become a member of the channel during that rant. Obviously, you feel the same. And, you know, for me, I agree. And I think the best comment I've seen so far is Mark. Mark's got my wonderful county badge in there, so he's a man of integrity. But I agree. I always think that when you look at what goes on, right? When you look at what goes on, I always think it's very easy to stick knives in. And trust me, I'm going to hold my hand up. When I first started making content, sometimes I got lost in the emotion of being angry over being in the emotion of being practical. And something that I've tried to iron out as I've matured doing this. For me, I think I look at the game last week, and I think you've spoke really well there, Fazz, because I think passion and emotion are great things. But for me, you've only got to look at your children. If you keep telling them what they've done wrong, you're only going to reinforce how bad they are, because they're going to start becoming fear of making success. And you know what I saw this weekend? I saw a team that I don't think the game plan was bad. I don't think the players were bad. I actually think it's deeper than that. I think they weren't bold and they didn't execute and they didn't stick to their mandate. And anyone who watched my review saw how the structure fell apart. Players started to be fearful, started to sit back. Zones went into chaos because there's 30 players where there should be 12. Do you know what I mean? Suddenly it went chaos. And before you know it, someone made a comment earlier, Plowman, it's not his fault. He's so scared of making a mistake. Spot on. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And lo and behold, I thought Plowman was in our bottom four, but I can't look at that game and say Plowman lost us the game. I wish I could. I wish 56 points was one player. That 56 players for me was 22 players. That 56 2 points is on 22 players plus the sub. So for me, the biggest issue I had with that game is kind of accountability. And I think for me, the way this club gets better, and why I asked that question was Nick Newman had this wonderful article today where he talked about how hard it was. Now, Nick Newman, who don't know, he was overlooked at the draft. He went the hard route, was unfancied, ended up at Sydney. Few games there, never in and out the side, made some mistakes as a young player does. Got his opportunity. And he said something about Carlton and being delisted and then Carlton skipping the queue and making that faux trade and giving him an opportunity. He was really excited about Carlton being the worst team in the league and was excited about jumping at that opportunity, excited about being maybe being the guy that turns it around. But the big thing he said was he was wanting to come to be a leader. He was wanting to be a standard setter. And this is my issue with this football club. And it's not an attack on the fans. It's not an attack on the club. I think we have a duty at times to be accountable. So when you lose, I try and approach every loss with what can I learn out of it and what went wrong and how I can fix it. And I try and make my content so you guys can understand where I'm coming from, maybe from a football point of view. But what I'm trying to get to is the most important thing is we need more Nick Newmans in this club, but we also need more Nick Newmans as a fan base, And I agree with what you said there, Fazz, about unconditional. We've lost, but I'll tell you what right now, I haven't spoken to many players. I've spoken to 2 since that loss, and my feedback from them has been what you've said. They're heartbroken, and one of the players, I'm not going to reveal who it was, but in the DM said to me that we were all horrible and we were all behind the 8 ball and they're all disappointed. And one of them said to me I feel so sorry for anyone who came and watched that in Victoria. Like, felt sorry for anyone to travel to see that because they're hurting. So now for me, you put the loss aside. It's a loss. And that loss, if the boys win the next 15, that loss is forgettable. Do you know what I mean? We'll forget about it.
Right.
Now, we've got the perfect opportunity to get behind these boys because I come at it as an English person. English people, it's war to us. Sport is war. It's the modern day warfield. We are on Dunkirk, D-Day, Agincourt, El Alamein, all these wonderful historical battlefields. This is our modern day. So now my Warriors are about to go to war on Sunday against St. Kilda's best 22 Warriors. They need me here. They need me here cheering them, believing them, supporting them, having a belief. And that's a big thing for me because I see the fans as a reflection of the club. And for me, I don't think there is faith. And I saw someone earlier in the comments saying they've got to win our trust back. No, they don't. No, they don't.
They do not. They do not.
For me, the biggest thing that they've got to do is that we don't have to trust the players. We love the club. And love and trust are hand in hand. So do you know what I mean? We've got to scream and cheer and believe in them until, you know what, that they leave. And eventually it'll be a new crop of players. My sons will probably do Pominos Junior shows and it'll be probably the same problems, a little bit different, but they'll still have to have that belief. got to go in there now and execute, because I'm telling you from the bottom of my broken Pommy soul, and yes, Darren, Poms are shit at sport sometimes. You'll find out, though, in the Ashes when we win that one 5-0. But we won't talk about that one, mate. For me, this is so important, right? They aren't a shit football team. They aren't a shit football team at all. They're very talented boys. And I'll tell you what I'm seeing now is they're learning to go from probably the hardest place in life, from when everyone downtrods on you, steps over you, takes the piss out of you, thinks you're nothing, to suddenly now they have a little bit of a reputation, and now they're being chased. Now there is expectation, there's faith, there's hope. But you got to see David King this week. Absolute fucking idiot, that guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That his article is the same article he wrote last year, where last year he said Carlton can't win anything if they can only score from clearance. Did an article this week, wasted 45 minutes of my time saying, the problem with Carlton at the moment is they've won 3 games this year, having to find new methods to score. But they can't score from centre clearance and stoppage. And I'm like, hang about. This time last year, you said you can't score from one opportunity. So for me, this week is the game, because I love it. The bookies hate us. The fan base hates us. The world hates us. And Fazz is a great example for me of great sporting people. He comes from a club called West Ham Football Club, right? West Ham United. Every bastard hates West Ham. Everyone hates them because they're known to be dirty, violent, thugs. Do you know what I mean? They're fighters. And you know what? They play with a chip on their shoulder. And I remember watching Arsenal this weekend and saying, West Ham will beat Arsenal, because they see a top 4 side and they're like, you know what? Fuck you and your glamour. We're going to play and we're scrappers. And that's what these boys need to learn. And you know what? Do you know how West Ham do that? You go to Upton Park. It's now London Stadium. I've never been there. But I'll tell you what, when you hear 40,000 EastEnders singing I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles, you suddenly realise why this side has got a spine. You realise that, you know what? I'm not coming out of this alive. These guys are going to fucking scrap. And for me, that's what we need to do. We need to get behind these boys. Because I'll tell you what, yeah, they might not look like they're trying. And you know what? I guarantee you now, I had a couple of young players, right? A couple of young players who I spoke to. They were fucking hurting after this. Yeah. They were hurting. And I'll tell you what, that gives me hope. Because the reason they were hurting wasn't selfish reasons. The reason they were hurting was as a team, because they'd let themselves down.
Spot on. Spot on. And the analogy with the supporters is actually spot on. And I think that this conversation we're having is not so much about what happens on Sunday in the game, as far as what St Kilda do and what we do. It's more about us as a supporter base. And in talking about West Ham and that Arsenal game that occurred just this weekend gone, Arsenal were 2-0 up 9 minutes in, but you could still hear the West Ham fans chanting the whole way. And I know I'm biased because I'm West Ham, but that's what we've got to do. We've just back the boys, you know, like I said, unconditionally. I think in regards to what you said with Nick Newman, I think it's a great point. It's maybe something we as a club maybe need to look in a little bit further, as far as is getting so many high-end draft picks in a club the right way to go about it, because they don't really have the standards set. I'll use Bryce Gibbs as an example, and he will have no issues in me saying this, because he actually said this in a podcast himself. He was talking about how he had been given everything from 7 years old. He was the best player in his team from 7 years old. Bang, 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 everything. Just actually got to walk through. Gets drafted by Carlton in the leadership group in his first year. Nah, that's not on. And I think that's something we need to consider. Look at the Nick Newman types. Why are Geelong so successful? Bring some players in who, and by all means, you need these high-end players. You need high-end talent. High-end talent, you know, cherry on top, wins you those games. But it's the fighters. It's the blokes who have had to do it hard their whole lives, scratching tooth and nail to get into a team that really gets you out of the shit when you're in the shit.
Mate, spawn. And to be fair, it was harsh calling me folks. Obviously, I a Tiger. Nowadays, I can tell you, I grew up in the soccer hooligan culture. Now that doesn't happen, but the culture still exists. The East End of London, where West Ham is, it's full of council estates. It's full of commission housing, as you guys would call it. It's a low socioeconomic background, and everyone brought up in the East End is born to fight. He's born to fight. And I don't mean physically scrap. They know that they are up against the 8 ball. And you see that in the culture of West Ham. And trust me, as a United fan, and I wanted to come on to this, we've got to be very careful, right? And thank you very much, Ryan and Mel. By the way, your shirt is on your way. I posted it this morning, so let me know. And thank you as well to Marky, who just became a member of the channel. I'll tell you what, passionate speeches are going well. But Zach Tui, like Ryan and Mel says, spot on. And for me, we've got to be careful as a fan base. And Man United, for me, are the biggest version of Carlton, right? Because I can kind of relate to it. Because I feel like I'm in the 70s when I talk to young Man United fans. Because I remember the 90s. It was fucking great. Winning everything, doing what we wanted. You know, fucking, it was the best place to be. Every year was quality. Champions League, everything. It was the happiest time of my life. I used to love Saturday mornings because Saturday mornings meant my team were winning, right? It was brilliant. I used to go to school like 10 men, chest out, because my team were winning. But now I see this different culture of it, and I see it in kind of Carlton fans where they remember the winning. And I always am very careful as a young man in Man United forums not to say, well, in the 90s we did this, because I'm not stupid. I know if United play 4-4-2, counter-attacking football, they'll lose 5-0 every fucking game, right?
100%.
And I know doing it the old way doesn't work because we used to have a bigger budget than anyone else, a bit like Carlton. We could buy better players because we had more money than everyone else. We had a bigger pull. We were the biggest club in the land. No one wanted to go to Chelsea at the time because they had no history. We had the glamour history. So now you kind of are in a culture shock where you're like, fuck, I remember winning. It was really good. And I want to get it back. And I'm going through it kind of Carlton again with my United. I am seeing a side that is playing with pride, that is starting to learn to win again and starting to be a good football team. But on the other hand, they're susceptible to 7-0 against Liverpool. And 7-0 versus a Liverpool was kind of like Adelaide. What I saw against Adelaide. It was boys going with a purpose. They got beaten up really early and suddenly they shit themselves and they were right back to 2 years ago. Fuck, this is what it used to feel like. You could see it in the eyes of Cripps. There's a scene when Cripps comes off third quarter time and Fisher puts his arm around him and it felt like Cripps was having fucking Vietnam flashbacks. It was that's what it looked like in his eyes. And what I'm trying to say is that's where we come in, and it's something I bang along about my Man United fans. Like, stop talking about Fergie. Stop talking about him. He isn't coming back. Scholes isn't going to play in the midfield. Cantona's not playing anymore. We're fucked. These are the players. Stop it. And Darren, music to my ears, right? 16 flags. It's great for history. But in reality, we have to do it a new way. In the AFL era, the draft and things like that. And you know what? No regrets. I know he's taking the piss, but he is a mate of the channel. He's a Collingwood fan. They crumble under pressure. They do. But you've got to remember, these boys have never fucking been under pressure. Playing for Carlton Football Club, your highlights are beating Essendon twice a year and maybe finishing 14th, right? But now, look, Zach Fisher looks at his age, 24. TDK, 24. Do you know what I mean? They look and they're like, fuck, before I know it, my career is gone. So what I'm saying to the fans, the players, the coaches, there's no tomorrow. There's no time is fucking potential. There's no, you could be good. This is the fucking list. So tell you what, you go to St Kilda, a rabid dog. Ross Lyon, he's fucking got them pumped. And you go into that game, and you know what? Instead of doing what you've done for 5 games this year, piss about and work out what the opposition is, you watch what Collingwood did to St Kilda. You know St Kilda are brave. They score toe-to-toe. and you go hard at that team. You play your way. It's time now that this Carlton brand we see against North Melbourne, Geelong, when they're weak, starts coming out against fucking football sides. You go out there and you scare fucking St Kilda, watch them shrivel their little balls, and we're the bigger team in the land. Fucking go out there and hurt them.
Couldn't agree more. A wise man once said that the front windscreen is much bigger than your rearview mirror. And if you keep looking in that rearview mirror, you're going to crash. And unfortunately, your analysis and your analogy is perfect. Man United and Carlton, spot on. Because we keep thinking that we're entitled. We're entitled to be successful because we're the Carlton Football Club. People won't like that comparison, saying you want to be that club that fights and scraps. That's a Bulldogs and a St Kilda and a North Melbourne thing. Well, newsflash, Bulldogs, North Melbourne, they've won flags more recently than we have. So acting like Man United, being entitled because we've got the history, how's that gone for Man United? How's that going for us? Get in there, get your hands dirty. Let's keep looking forward. And more importantly, not too far forward. Let's look to Sunday. Then once Sunday's done, it's in the rearview mirror. We look to the next one. Live in the moment, live in the now. Thursday's gone. The last I want to hear about it. Sunday, new day. Boys will go out there. It's 22 versus 22, yeah? 22 versus 22. Back to basics. Beat your man.
Yeah. Someone said something to me and it really pissed me off and they caught me at a wrong time. So you know me, and thank you, no regret. I try and be impartial in my analysis, but someone commented on my Adelaide preview and said, "This is the problem, Pom. You showed Adelaide no respect," right? And I'm going to be honest, it fucking annoyed me, right? Because I genuinely show every team in the AFL. I don't say danger game. Do you know why? Because I've got respect for 17 other clubs. It's elite level sport. 18 sides can beat 18 sides. That's my respect. What I said about Adelaide is Adelaide are specialists in the basics. They are boring at the basics. But truth be told, Adelaide will finish 12th, right? They'll finish 12th or 10th. They're Brighton of the AFL. They're a very good side, but if a top 4 side plays 8 out of 10 and Adelaide play 10 out of 10, that top 4 side win, right? Same with St Kilda. I have got all the credit in the world to St Kilda. Ross, people laughed at Collingwood when they lost to Brisbane. The only reason Brisbane won that game was because they were at the Gabba and they came out 10 out of 10 and Collingwood were maybe a 7. And then that lead was too much. But the biggest side that I give respect to in the AFL is St Kilda because they're the only team that has gone and played Collingwood and said, we're going to play our way and we're going to let you play your way. And you know what? St Kilda stood up and took some fucking almighty right hooks from Collingwood. And you know what? They nearly won. They nearly won, right?
Yeah.
But they were more impressive, St Kilda, to me than Brisbane because Brisbane got the jump. It was like when Collingwood got the jump of Richmond in the prelim that year. Richmond were the better side. Mason Cox just thought he was Tony Lockett. But if we're honest, Brisbane were by far the best side that got shell-shocked. For me, this is what Carlton have got to look at. If you come out and you play your game style, you can dictate it. And Collingwood, for large parts of that game, dictated it. I love this game because this game here, St Kilda are brilliant around the ball, brilliant around pressure. Their whole game is pressure. From the full back to the full forward, all high in pressure acts. For me, this is the game that if I was picking a team that Carlton had to play when they had to dust themselves off, I'd give them the toughest task in the AFL. I think this year is St Kilda behind Collingwood. Collingwood will bully you. St Kilda, they like being bullied as well. My fear with Carlton is maybe people are forgetting how hard they've worked. North Melbourne, they bullied them, they dropped off. GWS, they bullied them, they dropped off. This week, apart from the first quarter, take that out of it, it was kind of a 60-40 game to Adelaide. If you take the last 10 minutes and the first 10 minutes out, that kind of game could have gone either way. People forget when Harry Mackay missed that shot. That would have been 3 goals in a row, 20 points. Suddenly, momentum's back. This is the game, though. Fresh slate, like Fazz says. Stop looking in the past. Like, I would make it a rule of your membership that you're not allowed to talk about 1995, right? Unless it's October, right?
Yeah.
Because it's about this. And for me, this is it. Go to St. Kilda, our home ground. Charlie Curnow, the king of Marvel. He makes Jeremy Cameron look like Levi Casbolt at Marvel, right? Go out there, play to your strengths. And you know what? You win this game. I want to hear no bollocks like, they're not a top 8 side, because people are saying that. St. Kilda have beat fuck all as well. They've beaten the Doggies, who were top 4 in everyone's preseason predictions, and Fremantle top 8 in preseason predictions. We've beaten Geelong, who were back-to-back premiers in the predictions, and we drew with Richmond, who were going to have another dynasty. Like, so this is it, boys. Fucking beat them, man. I love St. Kilda. They're my wife's team. I don't have second teams, but I don't mind them winning, right? Because I feel sorry for her. She hasn't seen the most successful thing Zoe's seen was fucking Nick Rewalt, right? That's it. That's her life. Nick Rewalt. He's basically a blonde-haired Casbolt. Go out there and fucking win.
I'm telling you now, and I've been pretty accurate this year with my Carlton tips. I've never been more, I wouldn't say confident, but I've never been more excited to know that what we're going to do on Sunday. I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts that we're going to win on Sunday. I genuinely believe it. And I said it, and you can go back, watch all the shows, go back and watch them all. The Richmond one, I think I nearly called the draw, didn't I? The Geelong one, I said we'd be this point. I've got a good record, so whatever. I genuinely believe we'll win this week.
You know the big thing, and John nailed it, right? Carlton did lose 2 games then, but the biggest thing I think about this game is Carlton will go, and I agree with James here. They'll go to that level. You know when Carlton will go to that level, right? It won't be when you talk about percentage. It won't be putting away shit teams by 50, 60 goals. You know when Carlton will get to that level that we all hope for? It's when they come out and they don't need to be beaten in a game to rise. Because I've got to predict, I'm like Fazz. I think the boys will come out and it's 2021 again. They're going to come out, 2022 again. They're going to come out. They're going to be pumped. It's going to be quick ball movement. We're going to be like this. Oh, where's this been for the first 4 rounds, right? That's what we're going to be thinking to ourselves. But once they learn to intrinsically motivate themselves to not have to get a hiding to find that next gear, right? That is when this side evolutionizes. And last week, if you are a percentage buff, is the reason that I tell you, you can stick your percentage up your ass. Stick your percentage up your ass, right? Because some of the people that talk about percentage, I don't even think can fucking work out percentage. But just if you can, you've got to win games for percentage to matter. And I tell you what, the games you lose to your mid-table sides are the sides that keep you out of finals. So, tell you what, we'll have percentage talk when Carlton go to Adelaide every year and dip them by 6 goals. And then I'll start saying, need 8 goals.
I thought we had a deal, Pommy. We had a deal. We were going to go one show without talking about fucking percentage.
I'll talk about percentage, right? The minute I can go on Twitter for fucking more than 6 fucking hours, right? And not see someone go, like someone, like honestly, I'm not going to name and shame them, but just so you know, after the Adelaide game, I have never been so angry, right? And the last time I was as angry as I was when Bryce Gibbs was chaired off by this football club, right? So I was somewhere between that and Collingwood when I quit Blue Abroad, right? And I was scrolling down and someone said, you know what fucking worries me is we let them kick 4 goals late. We didn't protect our percentage. And I'm like, we just got beat by 10 goals. Full percentage. How is the last 2 goals worrying you? Stop doing it to me, chat. Please.
Oh, mate.
Please.
Hey, boys, we're gonna park the bus to protect our percentage.
Like, just please, just a week, 7 days. Give me it. 7
No
days,
more.
danger game and percentage, nothing. Fuck me.
I'll call it now. I'm gonna call it now. You ready?
Go on.
Carlton will be 47 points up at 3/4 time against St Kilda,
Oh,
and win by
I'm
three
scared.
and win by 3 goals. And everyone will talk about percentage.
Mate, spot on. And Michael here, you nailed it. You were talking about when you were engaged to Emma Murray. Spot on. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't tell you how big sports psychology is. I've had the privilege of working with some really good top golf pros, and a good couple of my mates were inside the world's top 100 that I got to work with. And the sports science aspect of it is insane. And what worries me sometimes is I see the psychologists working at Carlton, and they're actual clinical psychologists. So, like, bereavement counselors, things going on in your life, which is all well and good, but you've got to understand sports people are a little bit fucked. Like, I wasn't top elite level. I was very good, right? And that's why I went into coaching. But, like, we don't really think things because we're, like, bred from the age of, like, 11, 12 to look at situations incredibly different. Right. So it's why I kind of get turned on by abuse, because that naturally motivates me, because I had a lot of people when I was a kid, you won't play golf for a living, become an accountant. You hear it a lot. You subject yourself when you say you want to be a sportsman from a lot younger age to people who are going to tell you can't do something. So you start to generate a way of doing it. But you would be incredibly shocked at some of the pros I work with. One of them famously fucked up an Open, right? And I remember working with this guy in a short game committee with 2 other coaches, and his mental state was fucked. I remember leaving that, and I won't reveal his name, but he was famous. I remember going back to my boss and saying, this cunt's cocked. Like, he's the best player I've ever seen train, but I've just seen 2 rounds of golf of his. And fuck me, the guy that was on the range to the guy that was here today, different player. And his mind had fractured, man. Like, it was like he was having flashbacks, kind of like PTSD. And I've worked with a few of my mates one of them has been leading a major, and he's a very good mate of mine. He was a super good mate of mine. I won't reveal your name, but his mental state is so interesting to talk to, because he actually worked around it and got into the top 10, right? He got into the top 10 in the world, right? After it. But how he talks about his mind and the visions he had. And you know what? Sometimes, much love, James, sometimes you'll be shocked at the things that trigger them and the self-doubt we have. Self-doubt is huge. And I see it in the boys. Like, I'm not a sports psychologist, but I've done little bits of it as part of my course when I was a golf pro. You'll be shocked, right, at the things that trigger, and they're called pressure tendencies. You start to see them in people when you've trained to see them. Carlton's got a big one. You've only got to look at the stoppage and how Cripps, Kennedy operate in the centre when Carlton get battered. Their first movement, it cost us 6 goals, is they go back towards their goal to buy themselves time, and then suddenly realise, oh shit, we need to get there, creating the space for that handball. Another great example is our players naturally in transition get panicked and start dropping back to stop the transition. These are pressing tendencies, a bit like the yips Darren's talking about. Yips are basically your hand trying to push the ball to the hole. Your brain loses control of 2 hands at the same time. It's a real crazy thing, but you would be shocked how easy it is to cure. But the cure is a hell of a lot of discipline, and it's players like Nick Newman around you, putting their arm around you, saying, it's all going to be all right. I'm not doing it. I'm not panic, boys. It's all good. And it's mental reinforcement. It's almost like learning to walk again. If you ever get the yips in golf, 100%. It's like learning to walk again.
100%. And I think, even from a lower level, like thinking about my mental state when playing cricket, and for those who follow me on social media, I won a couple of awards this year with my bowling, but ask anyone who I work with, Richie, Mitch, and all that. Every single week I'd be at work telling them how I'm going to fuck this up. I'm like, oh, this bloke's got to get this wickets and I'm probably going to get smashed against him. Every week I'd be telling me how I was going to stop this up. And I wasn't realizing what I was actually doing to myself, that I bowled terribly probably the last 3 games of the season. I had this award wrapped up, but I'm on my phone checking the website of the stats of the other guy, and it actually really impacted me. And I talk about these things all the time, working with kids and talking about this mental state. And I use this story a lot. With the bowling, I hadn't bowled a wide all season. I didn't bowl a single wide all season. I was on a hat trick this year, and the ball, leg side wide. Dead set, hat trick ball, leg side wide. And I tell that story a lot. And I know people, yeah. Well, I know a lot of people think, fuck, Fazz, we don't care about your cricket, but I think it's important to understand that this is some of the mental state when you're playing sport. How do you fix it? I get criticized a lot because I go halfway through my run up and stop and then go back there and start again because it didn't feel right. The way you fix these things, you've just got to be disciplined enough to identify when it's not going right and understand what you can do to change it. And I think it's not panic stations yet for these boys. It's not baby out the bathwater. It is literally back to basics. Go back to what you know.
Mate, spot on. What you've just said there and what Darren says, mental is huge. Mental is huge. David Ledbetter talks about this. I had the privilege of going to David Ledbetter Academy and learning from his coaches. And he is a huge advocate that golfers, and Fred Couples did a speech there, and I never forget this. It always sticks with me. He was asked a question of what's the difference between a golf pro and an amateur? And a few of these answers were around, and they were like stupid shit, like setup, swing planes. And he said, the biggest thing for me is when I play with amateurs is their good shots are as good as any player ever to play the game. He was like, it's how they react to them. And like, we asked him, what did he mean? And he goes, well, they don't get excited. He was like, they'll hit a bad shot and they'll F and moan and they'll break the fucking golf club. But he was like, they hit a great shot and there's no reaction. Their reaction is, oh, if only I did that on the second day, Fred. And he was like, it's the appreciation of doing something right. And I never forget what a good mate of mine, he was my assistant for a long time, a guy called Tom, and he's gone on and he's doing wonderful work out in Dubai. And I remember my short game is immaculate. For some reason, 100 meters in, honestly, my wife always says she married me because she saw my short game. Like, it is incredible. 100 meters in, I reckon I'm world class, even now, world class, right? But Tom used to ask me all the time, Dan, how do you do it? What do you think of? And like, I was actually trying to think. I'm like, what the fuck do I think of? And it took me ages, right? Because I'm a prepper, so I know my distance without looking in different hands of the clock with every club. So I didn't think of that. And then like one day we're playing and I was like, I've just actually thought, because I hit the ball to about that, I was thinking about my best blowjob. And he was like, I beg your pardon. And I realized when I am playing well, my brain switches off.
Spot on.
Switches off. And I go into autopilot. I'm in a happy place. And I've never suffered bad short game. However, my driving has always been poor. My long game has always been a poor part of it because I grew up on a links course. So it wasn't really important. It was about hitting the ball low and getting the percentages. And I can tell you when I'm struggling, even now, my brain is like this. As soon as I set up to a driver, it's going, oh, swing plane, takeaway. Is your grip right? Oh, is your weight okay? Transfer. Like my brain is like 1,000 comments. Like even when me and my mates play for like $200, like suddenly that pressure comes from nowhere. My brain's going, we were over the top last swing, or maybe make sure that we really get this. And I'm like, shut up, brain. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But every time though it's a short shot, my brain switches off. It just goes because I'm comfortable.
It's spot on. It's spot on. And I think I know we've spent a lot of time talking about this, but it's important for anyone who's doing these types of things to understand that. And it's exactly what you're saying, whether it's golf, whether it's footy, set shot, goal kicking, cricket, bowling. Like it just, there'd be times where I'd bowl an over and think, oh, geez, I can't even remember the balls I bowled, but it was a great over, or your brain is just keeps going and it's too short, too full, whatever. These boys, they just got to get out of their own heads. And I think someone mentioned self-talk. Self-talk certainly is toxic, but it's the people around you as well. The people, as I stop it, the people around you is what helps. So I talk about, again, I kept thinking about all these ways I'm going to fuck this up. I'm going to fuck it up. All the ways that it could go wrong. But Richie, Mitch, my old man, kept talking about, fuck up, Fazz, are you serious? You're bullying blokes out there. The only way you fuck this up is if you bowl backwards with your eyes closed. But sometimes you need to hear that. And I think our boys need to hear that from us, the supporters. Fuck it. I saw a comment about Wilkie. Fuck off, Wilkie, mate. Charlie Curno's the best forward in the game. He'll eat you for breakfast. That's what these boys need to hear. Cripps, Jack Steele coming in. Mate, he's got a fractured collarbone. Hip and shoulder him in the first contest. Bang. Let's go. Surround yourself with good people. Gavin, you are a beautiful person. I love it. Surround yourself with good people.
Mate, and you think, when it's a team environment, I remember going to a sports psychologist when I was 19 and I chunter. So, when people talk about self-talk, I actually find chuntering helps. And why you see my weird personality of taking the piss out of stupid shit kind of helps me deal with anything that's stressful. My wife tells me off all the time for it because, do you know what I mean? Someone can die in the house. I remember one of my wife's relatives died, and I was like, could look at it this way though. She left you 10K. And it's a dark joke. Do you know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But my way of dealing with stuff has always been that way of trying to make light out of it and make myself smile so it doesn't seem surreal. And I chunter. But I agree, good people. And from working in golf, although it's an individual sport, if you've ever played golf at a high level, it's actually a team. There's usually a short game coach, you've got your swing coach, and then you'll have maybe a putting coach or maybe a technical coach. Then you'll maybe have a sports psychologist, you have the caddy, you have a team. And our job is to basically big that guy up. For the week he's playing, you're like, oh my God, you're so sexy. Oh my God, I wish I was you. Do you know what I mean? Oh, you look beautiful. And even when they're not, and that is it in the team environment, this is where you're looking at your Nick Newmans, your Cripps, your Kernos even, your Fishers. Believe it or not, he's a 100 gamer, right? And it's getting these people more than less to have that mindset of, you know what, boys? Let's go to my mental book. And at the moment, this is the problem with Carlton, right? Versus Richmond, versus Collingwood. When it gets hard, Collingwood go into their little mental book. They pull the mental book out. They open the pages and they're like, oh, shit. 20 down with a quarter to go. What do we do? And then Pendlebury goes, don't worry, lads. I've got my book. Right. We stick to the plan. We hit space hard and we hit each other. And we work as a team. Carlton do that at the moment and they go, oh, fuck's sake. Fisher's drawn a big cock on the page. They haven't got that book yet, right? Because they've never won games as a good side. So for me, this is where we come in. Do you know what I mean? This is where we come in. We are that book. We cheer harder. We believe in them. We give them that intrinsic motivation because it's tough.
But it's been 50 odd minutes of talking about this, but the one message that we want to get out there is back the boys in. Just back the boys in.
You know what? Fuck it. It's our show. It can just be a Carlton show. I don't give a fuck.
Pom's pies. I like it. Better than Fazz pies.
Oh, God. Here we go. Right. I only use them as an example because they're winning. You know what I mean? But you know what? Chris here absolutely nails it, right? And this is a big thing, right? And I love mental health. I love it in sport as well. And what I'm saying here can be accredited to your life. I look at when Carlton lose, and I spoke to my mate the other day because he's a big Carlton fan, and he was messaging me, and he was like, "Oh fuck," he was like, "Gloves are off." I remember his opening message. Let me get my phone. Where is it? Oh wait, I'll do it on my ear. Right, his opening message here. Right, can't believe I fucking upgraded my membership to finals tickets. Fuck this club, right? That was his opening message, right? Right. Now, bearing in mind, I'm the worst to text an hour after a loss because I'm quite raw and emotive. And I read it and I was like, what a fucking idiot, right? I was going to lay into him. I was like, what a fucking idiot, right? But my point is I went back to him the next day and just said, look, when something in your life goes wrong, right, you've got two options for me. You either go to your bedroom, put the blankets over your head and have a fucking cry, right? Call your mates who tell you it's not your fault. It's life. The universe is against you. Something mythical, right? Like he was doing. He was saying, oh, we don't travel to Adelaide. I'm like, that's mythical. That's mythical. You're in your bed crying. I was like, or do you get out of bed, put your big boy pants on, go, I don't like my life. I don't like things in my life, and start changing it. But do you beat yourself up when you wake up the next morning and it's not fully changed? Or do you reward yourself because you've made little baby steps to change it? So if you hate, I use the example, he hates his job. Do you go, I've got an idea. I'm going to do a TAFE course. I really like doing gardening. So you start doing that. And then you praise yourself because you're one step closer to quitting the hate job and joining the job you dream of. And I was like, and it's about celebrating that and being proactive. And that's what the boys right now at Icon Park. And I worry when Fazz tells me that they're a little bit depressed because there has to be a time. I said to one of the players this week, it's not anything to be ashamed of if you've learned from it. It's a lesson, and take it as a lesson. And know that you're in control, never to make this happen again. That's what they've got to do.
I'd just like to put it, just a caveat on the group of players I spoke to, just more or less just happened to be the part of the rehab group. So there's about 35 of them, but yeah, so maybe they were a little bit flat because they were in the rehab group, but yeah, so just a bit of a little asterisk on that. The players I did speak to were in the rehab group. So
well, we've got record numbers watching us. We've got 120, so thank you very much. But what I'd love to ask the 120 people, I'm going to give you the coach's job, right? No, actually, fuck the coach. I don't like them at the moment. I'm going to give you that novelty job that Carlton usually do when we're fucked, right? And they bring some random person you've never heard of to give them a team talk, usually from the 80s, right? You're giving the boys a team talk Thursday tonight before they go away and have their final prep. What are you saying to these gentlemen to get them up and about? Fazz, you can start.
So I'm talking to him tonight in regards to Sunday, or am I talking to him on Sunday? Because there's two very different conversations I'll be having.
No, you're doing that one where they get a celebrity in. You give them a motivation. You know, like sometimes they get some dude in who like climbed the Himalayas and he goes, oh, well, it was quite fucking cold. And
yeah, look, to be honest, I would get someone in to just talk about how good life can be and how, it's not about getting up for Sunday. It's not about that. It's about going to bed tonight, understanding what privilege you've got compared to, and I'm not just talking about privilege compared to a normal person. You and I have privilege. Everyone in this chat, the fact that you're on the internet right now shows we've got privilege compared to some people in the world. So I think it's important that these boys go to bed with almost like sleeping on a cloud, like take all the weight off your shoulders and say, what a privilege you've got that you get to wake up on tomorrow morning. You don't have to, jump on the train and go to a 9 to 5, what a privilege that you get to play a sport with your mates. What a privilege that two morons are sitting here on a show talking about you on a Thursday night. That's the type of motivation. That's the type of motivation I'd be giving these boys. Don't worry about getting up for Sunday. It's not about that. It's about you internalizing your self-worth to the community, the Carlton community. And that'll get them up for Sunday. Because I'm very, very cautious about sugar hits. And get them up for Sunday. Get them up for Sunday. That's a sugar hit. You want to give them something that gets them up for the year. not just for Sunday. Because if they come out on Sunday and do the business and get the job done, but then fuck up against West Coast next week, then what's the point? You need something that's going to get these boys thinking, get them grateful, get them reflecting on themselves as human.
I don't mind it. I remember actually something very similar to what you did. Rangers went through a bad rut, and Walter Smith famously, actually, I think it was Ross County beat us 3-1. And it was like one of the worst performances I've ever seen. Like, honestly, it was like they might as well have not fucking bothered, right? To be fair, it was like one of the worst performances. And the next morning, he took them to the car factory in Glasgow and made them work for free and didn't say anything. And Ali McCoy talks about this on Talk Sport. Got them back in the office the next day. Didn't say anything to them. Just said, right, you can go home at 5. And the money's been donated to the Rangers Foundation. And then in the morning said, just so you know, did anyone enjoy that? And everyone was like, nah, it was fucking horrible, boss. He turned around and said, some poor bastard does that 6 times a week to sit in the pouring rain and watch what you did last fucking week. Well, 6 times a day, right? Just because he's one day off, he gets to watch you guys. And that's his one joy in his life. Everything else is this job. Just think about that next time you go out and fucking play. And McCoy said it had such an effect on the players. All the players, it like made it real because to them, being on 20K a week was normal. They didn't realize that they'd kind of forgotten what it was like to be poor or struggle and realize that people were literally devoting their lives just to watch them kick a football when it was a realism. I like it.
That's spot on. That's spot on with what you're saying, because you look at, football is a young man's game at the moment. You look, young draftees, and they're not bad people. Like they're really good young kids, but they are young. They're young men. Think about yourself when you're in your early 20s or something. It's easy for us to sit here and criticize and say they're not doing this, they're not doing that. They don't understand. That's why they need to get this understanding, to mature. They need to mature and see that there are people who literally save up all year. Some kids on Christmas, what they get for Christmas is a Carlton membership. That's their Christmas present. If they're lucky. Some kids might get a Carlton colouring book. You don't know. And I think that's the type of motivation this group needs. Just a bit of internalization about what you actually mean to a greater community outside of yourself. These young boys, and I've said it to young guys I play cricket with as well. I say, they don't actually know how important they are. They don't. They do not know how important they are. And once they realize how important they are, they'll play carefree footy. When you play carefree footy, you play better footy.
You know what? Spot on. And Eleanor, I love this. This is something that I'm a big fan of. Do you know what I mean? I know many years ago, Alex Ferguson brought the dads to training and got them to just remember what it was like to be in the back garden. This was, I think it was the 99 title push. He brought their dads back and said, just remember what it was like to be a kid, back garden, kicking footy with dad. This is why you're here. This is why you're here. Because at one point in time, this wasn't a job. This was a love. This was a labor of love. This was everything you dreamed of. You're now living your dream. I think my tact to them is, and I've thought about this hard if the club invited me in, I'd be like, trying to get the realism through that this will pass you by before you know it.
Oh, yeah.
One day you'll wake up and you'll remember St Kilda as either the game that made you the flag-winning team you are, or the time that the club got disillusioned and the great rebuild of 2015 was broken apart and finally over and a new rebuild begun. And what side of history do you want to be on? Because you have this wonderful opportunity now to go out there Sunday, Marvel, in front of a full crowd, everyone blue, as far as the eye can see, cheering you on. And do you want to be coming off that field thinking I left something out there? I let my teammate down? Or do you want to remember this day as the day that this club became great again? And this was the game that set you off to finals, where you had your last loss and you went back and you never looked back again. That's what I'd try and get through to these boys. Do you know what I mean? That it'll go before you know it. And we've seen how ruthless the AFL world is. Do you know what I mean? all it takes, and I predict this now, Carlton don't make finals, the guys you see in this list won't be there next year, a lot of them. Do you know what I mean? It'll be the start of the disillusion, and they'll go to a new method. And I think it'll be sad. I think this is the thing now. Boys have got to go.
Yeah, and I think that there's a word that I like to use a lot, and that's legacy. And it's not legacy about the Carlton Football Club, all right? For them as individuals. It's legacy as you as a person, as a family. Now, I wonder if he's still watching, but I've never said it to him, to his face, but I'll say it now to my old man. I loved hearing about when he was a good sportsman. I love seeing the broken trophies in the cardboard box that he had in the garage. That's legacy. I love seeing it. My dad was actually a decent sportsman. Shock. That's what you want to get. I talk about my achievements as a low club grade level cricketer. That's legacy. That's stuff that you internalize and you have, and you've got there forever. Your name's on that board, whether it's the Wallen Cricket Club, South Morang Footy Club, or the Carlton Footy Club. Your name is on that board forever. Forever. I was down at the club today with my kids. We were going through and I was looking at all these names from like 1900s all the way. Like, their names are there forever. That's legacy. That's what you want. If they don't want that, they're going to wake up in 10 years' time and think, gee, what was I a part of? Is my name going to be on that board? Yeah, my name gets on the locker because I played 100 games or whatever, but it doesn't mean anything. And I think that's what they need to get out of it.
Mate, I think, and before we wrap up, I think this week is the greatest week in the world to motivate these boys, because it's Anzac weekend. And for those who know that I was brought up by war veterans. And for me, this is the greatest analogy I can give. And it's a very loose one because obviously I'm comparing Carlton's situation to the great two wars. But right now, no one believes in them. The media is giving up. They can't do it. St Kilda are going to win. St Kilda are like the Germans in the media at the moment. Too big, too good, too strong. But the Anzacs, there was a group of guys that believed in each other, believed in themselves, had a bit of pride for their country to do what was right. And you know what? Against all odds, they went over to foreign shores, kicked ass, and some of them came home heroes. And those that didn't died heroes. And we will remember them forevermore and be ever thankful. What a great weekend to be a sportsman and to go in Anzac weekend, the fighting spirit, them brave young men, and go out there and forge your own fucking legacy and right the wrongs and work as a team in the weekend that basically is teamwork personified. I can't think of a greater team than any of them World War II veterans. What a great team they are to follow. What a great weekend to do battle.
Spot on. Spot on. Couldn't agree more.
Tell you what, champs, thank you very much for watching us. Go Blues.
Go the Blues.
Carlton by 27.
Carlton lose by 27 to Kilda.
Shut up.
I got the Blues by 17.
Blues by 17. And tell you what, guys, much love, guys, girls. See you next week. Go Blues.